There's a lot of advice out there for new writers, aspiring writers. And while I think that most of it is well meant, we should not forget that creativity, any creative work, should not be limited, and it comes in many sizes and shapes and variations. And it is good to consider there are some basic things that when you're starting, maybe people who have more experience from you, than you, they would say, okay, avoid this or try this. And it is good to consider all of these and to practice different things to find your own way. But we should not take any of these rules as sacred, unbreakable, and absolute. Um, First of all, there are way too many examples of every one of these rules being broken in a good way, by, of course, by some of the best writers. And even often, I've seen this being done by the first people who actually come up with these rules. A lot of these rules have this footnote that someone actually found that the same person who came up with this rule, or one of the biggest advocates for this rule, actually did not follow them. And um, beyond that, even for first time writers, for aspiring writers, we should understand that um, there are a lot of backgrounds, there are a lot of ways to do something creative. And the readership is also very diverse. So we want to bring this diversity. We want to have people from all over the world read it. Not only that books get translated, but also more and more people read, especially in English. There's so many all over the world who are a native, or basically get access to this book, and they have different tastes, different backgrounds, different cultures, and they see things differently. There are people who like something that someone else doesn't. So I hear a lot, for example, one of the very common things that I see, especially beta readers, talk about is exposition. So, what someone considers exposition, um, it is not a very fixed thing. So, some people consider a, a description of a castle as exposition, where someone else would consider them just part of grounding the reader in the scene. You might describe sense, or you might describe a character, and someone could consider this an exposition. Or you could explain and describe an alien species as a word building. So you cannot just label everything as exposition and say, well, you can, but um, that's not a reasonable thing to bar people from something because it might be considered exposition. Um, you can use any of these rules. You can practice, you can try your way, and a lot of these rules, there are a lot of these saying and ideas, they are there for a reason. They're helping you. Maybe you think about it again, you read something and you feel like, okay, well, does it matter how this character looks like, or this castle that I'm describing? And if you think it matters to the story, even if it's just cool, you know, I read a book a lot of fantasy books that I read because I loved the word building and I found that cool. And if I didn't want to read about um, some word that is not the same as ours, I would read a different genre. You know, we we need all of this. We need all of these variations, and by limiting, we are doing a disservice to not only the new writers, but also to the readers who would never get to see and experience this creativity, this new scene, this alien species. They might not get to hear about it, they might not get to read about it just because someone told this writer, oh, this is too much information or too much exposition. I, of course, very much agree with the idea that, okay, um, try not to like hit the reader with big chunks, blocks of exposition, especially in the beginning. Um, and writers, um, they should try to mix everything. So sprinkle in this information in an organic way in the story. Um, but you cannot just say that everything, you know, every text, every description is exposition, and that's also a bit of random rule because what would be considered exposition, right? You talk about like there's a murder mystery, and you talk about the crime scene. Is that exposition? You talk about I don't know, maybe the character feels cold. Is that exposition? It really depends. It depends how it's written and how it's described. And exposition, when you think about it, the topic itself, there is a point with like it serves the story. It's not about not having exposition, is how you do this. Um, how you introduce some information, how you handle it, how when you introduce it, for example, and if there is a lot of information, lots of names, lots of details that the reader doesn't immediately see any point in remembering, of course, this is not going to stick in their minds, okay? But that is a decision that a writer should make. And the best way to improve is just you write it and you read it and you seek other people's opinion, of course, better readers. But just because one person didn't like it doesn't mean it's not good. And also, if everybody loves it, doesn't mean it's good. So you keep just writing and revising, and the idea is just to make it better as much as you can. And there is a point when you have to stop because, um, of course, everything can always get better. And the masterpieces, the classics, everything can get better. But at some point, it's good enough. And that is okay. You can just put it out there and let it have its own life cycle and would be out of your hand, and you just let it grow.